Across the country, tackling the topics everyone is talking about online. Share, engage, and interact. This is Newsfeed Now.
Hey everybody, glad you can join us here on Newsfeed Now on this Friday. I'm Suzanne Bruner. Aside from people talking about it being Friday the 13th, there are actually plenty of other stories people are talking about online right now. And that's what Newsfeed Now is about, and we're here to bring you what's trending your way. And yes, the election process is still the big talker today, especially in Georgia. So let's take a look at what's happening there. That's where they're going to be doing a full recount by hand of the presidential election ballots. That's going to happen today. Georgia instituted a new audit process. The Secretary of State says the process ensures the election integrity. Counties have until next Friday to certify the results. The Secretary of State must certify the full state results by November 20th at 5 p.m. But taking a look at where those results stand at this point, the margin between President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden is just over 14,000 votes. Biden is in the lead. Now that the election is seemingly over, though, lawmakers are scrambling to try and pass a COVID relief bill to help millions of Americans still struggling. But Democrats and Republicans remain divided on a path forward. Washington correspondent Raquel Martin reports.
This is a red alert.
Thursday, Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi accused Republicans of ignoring the raging pandemic to peddle false election conspiracies.
Thousands are dying. We don't have time for these kinds of games.
The two insist Biden's victory proves Americans want a more aggressive approach and called on Republicans to pass Democrats' more than $2 trillion COVID relief deal.
We really have to focus in on how we're fighting this.
Wisconsin Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin says it's time to strike a compromise.
Speaking for myself, I am absolutely ready to do that.
She says Wisconsin businesses are crippled and hospitals are overwhelmed. For 2 days in a row, the state has reported more than 7,000 new cases.
They're in very dire straits.
But even after months of debate, Democrat and Republican leadership remain as divided as ever.
The only thing that's standing in the way, in my view, is Speaker Pelosi.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Democrats are blocking Republican efforts to pass targeted relief for hospitals, businesses, and the unemployed.
They should drop this ridiculous partisan gamesmanship.
Republican Missouri Senator Josh Hawley blasted Democrats who say Republicans are distracted by the election.
That's nonsense. Republicans are here. We have attempted repeatedly to move a bill onto the floor.
So far, negotiations haven't resumed since the election. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
And Raquel joining us now. Good to see you, Raquel. Thanks for joining us here on Newsfeed Now. Both sides, they appear divided. They have been divided for some time now. Can't seem to find common ground to pass a bill. What's it going to take to get there?
It's unclear, and as I mentioned, it's unclear if they are going to pick up negotiations. There have been no bipartisan negotiations since election week wrapped up, and all we're seeing at this point is both sides dig their heels and deeper on their stances. They came back to the Hill this weekend, really making the same talking points that they had before the election. Democrats want a huge plan, and Republicans are taking a more cautious approach, saying that they don't want to pass a massive spending bill. They want to take a targeted approach, giving money to schools and businesses, for instance, and really getting the things that Democrats and Republicans already agree on across the finish line.
Adding on to what you said, what would you say is the key differences between both bills?
Well, really, the biggest difference, is the dollar amount. I know that Democrats' bill really encompasses a wide range of issues. They want to give a more robust unemployment benefit to people who are still unable to find work. They want to have stimulus checks inside of that bill. While Republicans do agree with sending out another $1,200 stimulus check, that is not in their targeted bill. They also want to provide more money to schools, a bigger dollar amount there, and a much bigger dollar amount in the money they want to send to local and state governments. That has been one of the biggest dividers between Democrats and Republicans, is that for the longest, Republicans said they do not want to bail out blue states, so they want to give a smaller amount, and they are trying to rather loosen the restrictions on the money they've already sent out so that they can use the billions of dollars they already sent out to these states rather than allocate new funding. Another issue that is holding them up is a testing strategy. Democrats want a more robust national strategy, and they want to invest more money in contact tracing methods. But Republicans are saying this should be a state-by-state issue.
You've been following this very, very closely. How long do you think it's going to be before something gets passed and Americans see some sort of relief?
Well, the hope, and both parties are saying that they want to get something passed by the end of the year. And typically, a lame duck session would be when you would see politics put aside and maybe some progress or more bipartisanship with the elections out of the way. But listening to the rhetoric that we're hearing from both sides of the aisle coming back into this week, it's really unclear if that's going to happen, as both sides seem more divided rather than more eager to come to a bipartisan agreement.
All right, Raquel, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us up to date in Capitol Hill. We appreciate your time. Health experts are preparing for a possible twin-demic this winter. The University of California, Davis has added new capacity to test for both COVID-19 and the seasonal flu at the same time. So UC Davis Health announced it was the first health system in the region to use a new rapid molecular test that actually provides results within 20 minutes. The new test is set to help healthcare providers manage and treat both viruses. And researchers at the University of Miami believe they have found part of the reason why more men get sick and die from COVID-19 than women do. Brian Enton explains how the virus can impact a man's fertility.
Scientists know that more men get sick and die from COVID-19 than women do, and researchers at the University of Miami say they have determined one of the reasons why.
Because of its high affinity of the virus to the testis.
Dr. Ranjith Ramasamy and his team discovered COVID-19 invades men's testicles. They tested the reproductive organs of men who died from COVID and found the virus inside the testes. But what surprised them even more is when they tested a living man who recovered from COVID-19, the virus was still inside his testicles.
This we were very surprised with, because even after the infection was cleared, he had some fevers and cold that he got better with on its own. And then 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, after his initial infection, he tested negative. And then the virus was still present in the testis. And this was surprising because we found that the virus could probably linger in the testis a lot longer than men actually develop their symptoms.
Researchers say this explains why 10 to 20% of men with COVID-19 have testicular pain. Future studies will determine whether COVID-19 impacts male fertility.
Patients who want to have kids in the future, who haven't completed their families, I think certainly there is a rationale for their sperm production and their fertility potential to be affected. And I think we're urging men who either develop testicular pain or who want to have families in the future to think about checking their sperm count to make sure they have healthy and viable sperm.
And research is ongoing to determine whether COVID-19 is sexually transmitted.
I don't think we know the answer to that question definitively yet. But the fact that it is present in the testis gives us a clue that it can enter the seminal fluids and can be sexually transmitted.
And we'd like to bring in Brian joining us now from Miami to talk more about this report. This is a really interesting study that researchers are working on right now. So watching this story, testicular pain, is this a COVID-19 symptom that men need to be on the lookout for, or is this something that kind of develops after you do experience those symptoms?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a symptom that men should be on the lookout for. You know, it's interesting because it's kind of an uncomfortable topic for some people to talk about, for some men to talk about, but it's really important. And the University of Miami is trying to get the word out about it, that 10 to 20% of men who have COVID do have testicular pain, and that can lead to other issues, possibly fertility issues, which is what they're looking into. But, you know, pretty disturbing what they found so far.
Yeah, you know, you talk about this is an uncomfortable topic to talk about, but we have to discuss this stuff, and especially when it comes to infertility, because this is an issue that a lot of couples face as well. So throw this in the mix. People are interested in what this could mean for them. But COVID, the research found this was still present in the testicles of living men even after testing negative for COVID 6 or 8 weeks later. Do they know when this eventually goes away?
They don't, and that's what they're trying to figure out. And you mentioned fertility issues. I mean, that can be obviously a big deal for families that deal with that. And there was a man who had COVID like 8 weeks ago, and he was having fertility issues. He went in for a fertility biopsy. They tested his testicle, and they found, you heard in the story, they found the COVID inside him 8 weeks later. He had tested negative. He had no more symptoms. He thought he was totally done with COVID, yet the virus was still inside him, inside his testicle. And that's what's really surprising to researchers. They're trying to figure out exactly whether that is impacting fertility.
Yeah, and at this time, are they still researching how COVID-19 could impact sperm count?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's still part of the research. They haven't finished that part yet, but the part that they did publish in the Men's Health Journal was that for sure they tested 6 people who died of COVID, tested their testicles, and saw that there was still COVID inside, and then that man that I just mentioned also still had COVID.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for bringing us this report, and the research continues, so we'll keep you updated with any new developments on that. With the pandemic still an ongoing issue, people in Japan, they're divided over whether the Tokyo Olympics should even take place next year now. Some polls have shown residents and businesses are down the middle over the merits of staging the games. So the games, they were supposed to take place this past summer, but it was moved to July of 2021. And check this out. This is really cool. More than 300 drones lit up the sky over South Korea's capital today. The government said the show is to help provide comfort and hope to residents battling the ongoing coronavirus outbreak. The drones formed multicolored designs, as you can see, featuring themes such as the coronavirus. It pictured people wearing masks and the government's Korean New Deal, which is aimed at creating jobs and helping the economy recover from the coronavirus fallout. Today's show co-host and weatherman Al Roker, he's back home following prostate cancer surgery. The 66-year-old appeared to be in good spirits when he posted these post-operative surgery pictures on Twitter yesterday. Doctors removed Roker's prostate following his cancer diagnosis. Roker says he is relieved to let you all know that my prostate cancer surgery is done and back home. That's what he posted on Twitter. The statement came alongside several optimistic pictures with his wife Deborah and the couple's 18-year-old son Nicholas. The pandemic pushed the Masters back from April to November. Considering all the things they do control, it's comforting to know the weather remains beyond the reach of the Green Jackets at Augusta National. Yesterday, officials were forced to postpone day 1 because of the storms in the area. Barclay Bishop takes a look at day 2.
Well, it does look like it's going to be a beautiful afternoon to play golf, which is welcome news from that rain we had yesterday. Still yesterday, we were able to catch up with some golfers who call Augusta their hometown, including a former Masters champion who's proving he still got it.
The opening round of the Masters was met with a torrential downpour and play suspended.
It started raining right when we took off, and started out a little rough there.
When you're old like me, it's easy to get up early. Like those are kind of normal mornings. So it's about dinner time now, and a little bit of a break to eat breakfast again and get going.
But it's not always how the day starts, but how it ends. And after more than 3 hours of weather delays, sunshine took over the grounds of Augusta National.
Anytime you come on this property, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether it's raining, whether it's dry, it always seems to be in perfect shape.
After returning to the course, 4 golfers from the Augusta area totaled 21 birdies, all shooting under par.
The greens are just so receptive after all that rain. It was fun to have some opportunities, not feel like you're hitting 3 irons and hybrids into every hole. So I thought the setup was great.
As fitting for 2020, this might be the softest we ever see the greens at Augusta National ever.
And responsible for 14 of those birdies were former Masters champions, 2018 winner Patrick Reed and 1987 winner Larry Mize.
With the greens being a little softer, so it's just gave myself some good birdie putts, and I was able to capitalize on 6 of them.
Round 1 resumed at 7:30 this morning. It was cut short yesterday due to the lack of daylight. Round 2 begins at 9:35 this morning, and then tomorrow, something we've not seen before, ESPN's College Game Day will be broadcasting live from inside the gates. Reporting in Augusta, Barclay Bishop, back to you.
Well, aside from the rain, I'm sure they're really happy about those greens, and who knows, maybe Tiger Woods wins it 2 years in a row? I don't know, but lucky for you, you'll get to catch the Masters again in April. All right, a Missouri sheriff's deputy had an emotional reunion with his young son after returning from deployment in Afghanistan. Deputy Sheriff Clint Thomas, he surprised his son after a 4-month deployment with the U.S. Air Force in Afghanistan. The sheriff's office posted this heartwarming video showing Thomas surprising his son. Okay, I think that's him there, walking up to the car. Oh, there he is. And he looks in, and there's his son just waving at him. He's like, "Is that you, Dad?" Oh my goodness. Gotta love these videos. But yeah, deputies pulled over the car the boy was riding in, and he was able to go surprise him. You gotta love those reunions. It's so amazing. Happy they're together again. Before we go, look at this. Superheroes saved the day of Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. This is in Palo Alto, California. They created a unique site for young patients as they swiped and cleaned windows just outside their hospital rooms. It was all to celebrate the annual Superheroes Day at the hospital, which was a bit different this year because of COVID-19 restrictions. Still, Batman, Superman, they brought out the smiles and a little inspiration on every floor. Gotta love that. Keep doing that. And we're just gonna leave it on that bright and positive note. Thanks so much for joining us here on Newsfeed Now. Have a great weekend.